All right, we are here today in our 2019 330i. This is a new 3 Series chassis from BMW, all new body, all new interior. And what we are doing today is replacing all of the mid-ranges and tweeters in the car with our Bavsound speaker upgrade, which is a completely plug-and-play upgrade. It's going to replace the 100mm mid-ranges and the 25mm tweeters. The locations that are in this car, which is a standard hi-fi configuration, is you have a tweeter and mid-range in the front doors, a tweeter and mid-range up in the dashboard, and a pair of mid-ranges in the rear door. Now, what our kit does here, if you're not familiar, it's a completely plug-and-play system, so there's no cutting of the wiring, no cutting up of the door panels. It's removable for you guys that are leasing and might want to do that, and provides a huge improvement in sound quality and sound clarity over the factory system. You'll just get a lot punchier mids and a lot smoother tweeters. On top of the material difference that we use, which gives you a big improvement. You'll see just the visual difference in between our upgrades just a little bit further into the video. It should be pretty immediately apparent why that's such a big difference. We've gotten a lot of good feedback on these kits over the years, and we think you'll be happy with the upgrade here as well. The other thing we have with us today is our Bavsound toolkit. This is an option at checkout. If you don't have your own set of tools at home, it includes everything you need to get the door panels off and get in here. It's a really nice little kit. I actually leave one in all my cars. Includes everything that you need to work on a BMW interior. With that said, we're going to go ahead and dive into this install and show you how to get this front door panel off. All right, so in this generation, this is actually one of the easiest door panels BMW has made to remove. And it's super straightforward for a few reasons. I'll show you a little more about that in a second here. But the first thing you need to know is it's only held in by 2 screws and a series of clips running around the door panel. There's 1 screw behind this cover, behind the door handle, and there's a screw down here in the door pocket. There's no cover over it. Once you lean down and get in there, it'll be immediately obvious. You'll be able to see it. It's going to be pretty hard to capture on camera just given it's back there and there's not a good way to get lighting in there. But again, lean down, look in the rear of this door pocket here, you'll see it. These are both Torx T15 bolts. We've actually a little bit of movie magic. This one's already removed here. So I'll show you how to get to this one behind the door handle, which is behind this plastic cover. So the tools that we'll need from our toolkit are our plastic panel removal tool, as well as our bit driver with a Torx T15 bit. So first thing we'll take is this plastic tool, and to get this cover off from the front edge, so the edge closest to the front of the door, you'll just take this in, and in this little gap here, just pry in and pop it out. Now, it's important to pry from that leading edge. As you'll see, there's these 2 little clips that slot in, and then just these lock it into place. So if you pry from that back edge, you might snap those and have to get a replacement, which isn't fun. If you go from that front edge, it will pop right out for you. Then we'll grab our driver with the Torx T15 bit. We'll go ahead and remove that. So with that screw out, and then there's also another Torx T15 down in here. Again, you'll be able to see that easily. We are ready to pop this panel off. So there's no other screws to remove. There's just a series of clips running around the outer door panel. And what I like to do is, starting at this front edge, sort of front lower edge over here, you'll just take your plastic tool and with this edge here, wedge it in behind the door panel. And the clips will start to release. Sometimes you'll have little guys like this pop off. I'll show you how to put that back on in a minute. And then just run your hand around this edge. And once they are all separated, the door panel will lift up and off, and you'll lean it in. I'll give our cameraman Kobe a second to come in here. When you get back here, what makes this so easy compared to the previous generations is there's just 2 connections to remove. So the first thing we'll do is remove this connection for the door handle. You'll just lift from this side. If you just lift up and out, that releases, leaving this single plug. Now this might be a little hard to capture on video being all black. I'll come back to this once the door panel is removed in a second here and show it to you in more detail so you can see it. But there's these two little tabs on each side that are release tabs here. So if you push inwards on those while wiggling out, that will release. So here I'll set the door panel over here, and just to show you again with better lighting, you can see there's these two little guys here. They just have this little locking point. If you push inwards on those while pulling directly outwards, that will release for you. All right, so the one difference to the driver's side door panel I wanted to talk about is this plug. Everything else is identical. It's the same two screws, same process, but this plug is gonna be different. We'll see if we can end up filming that. I don't think we are today, just as we're limited on time, but the thing you need to know, rather than these two little locking side tabs, it's going to be a bigger style plug with a locking lever. There's going to be a little tab next to the lever you'll depress. The lever will swing downwards and that plug will release. It's super simple, and that is the only difference you need to know about in between the passenger and driver's door. That rear door might have a plug similar to that. We'll see. If it doesn't, you guys can work that out real easy. And just wanted to mention that, so when you get in there and see a different style plug on the driver's side door, you're not surprised. Now, one thing I want to show you before we move on to replacing the speaker and tweeter, sometimes you'll get a clip that's stuck in the door panel, or excuse me, stuck in the door rather than the door panel. If you just come in with your tool here and pry outwards, you want to go as straight as you can. Sometimes the metal tool is a little easier there. And then once it's kind of partially out, I'm not gonna have you chase me over on the floor to grab that, but we'll just put that back in the door panel with my third hand here. So I'll show you guys. So you can see it's just sort of a slotted in. So you just take that. There's this portion here, and just slide that back into place. Oh, actually, you know what? This is important. I'm glad we actually saw this. So you can see there's the two channels. It's actually just this little lower channel here. So at the very bottom, this slot here is what you put in, it's looking like. So that will snap into place, just in case that happens to you. And at this point, we are ready to tackle the mid-range and tweeter. And we'll pause and I'll come back and show you what to do there. The first thing I want to talk about here, you'll notice there's two plugs going into the mid-range. This is on a single channel coming from the amplifier, so the signal for both the mid-range and tweeter is on one channel. So this is the actual signal for the mid-range and tweeter, and then this guy here is just a pass-through running up to the tweeter. We're not going to use that pass-through, as our wiring for our tweeter is different, but what I wanted you guys to note here when you're unplugging this is that the wiring color of what is running to the tweeter, this is the plug that won't be used anymore. So what I like to do is go ahead and unplug that tweeter lead. It just pulls directly out, and then you can just tuck that away here, as we won't be using that with our installation. Then you can remove the actual lead for the mid-range and tweeter. This is the one running back to the amplifier, and put that down. We will be using this. At that point, the mid-range is ready to come out, and it's just held in with these 3 Torx T15 as well screws. And that comes out. And while we have this out in our hands here, I just want to take a moment to show you the difference in between this and the Bavsound mid-range. So this comes in this little dust bag here we'll take off. And we do have a couple of gasket pieces that will be going on this mid-range. We're going to show you that on the bench in a minute. So I just wanted to show you here the couple interesting things we've done. You can see this uses a standard rubber surround. It's a paper cone. We use a Kevlar weave component and an inverted surround, which in this same space gives us much more travel than this factory mid-range. Means you get more punch, a bit more accurate reproduction. We're also using a larger ferrite magnet versus the neodymium magnet on this factory speaker. I mean, you can just see from the design and size, it's just a much better sound that you're gonna get out of this. So The next thing to do will be get our factory tweeter out. So we'll come back up here. It's held in by its single plug, or I should say it's plugged in by its single plug. So once this is removed, there's no clips or anything to get off. It's all just sort of a pressure clip style, or I shouldn't say no clips. There's a couple locating tabs and all that, but this will just come out. So as we discovered on the driver's side, if you remove this whole piece, if you want to show them, Kobe, this runs all the way around up here and it's in this gasket. We're probably going to go ahead and remove it fully so that we can show you what you need to be doing. What I'd probably recommend would be just get this slightly released here. Let's see, there's this front leading edge that sort of clips in. So about right here, if I was you when doing this installation, this is as far as I would go, just as it can be a little tricky to get this all lined back up over there. It's sort of one of those where you have to be getting it into two channels at once, but you'll have full access here. We're gonna pull it off fully in the video just so I can show you what we're doing behind here, but as you'll see, it's pretty straightforward and you can do it in the car. So we're gonna go ahead and, well, just in case you wanna take it off, I'll show you the process and then we'll take this over to our bench as well. So you'll just, here, I'll give Kobe a second to line that up. You'll just kind of work your way around here. This will all pull out. You can kind of come down. Same thing here, that can just sit out of the way and release. And what makes this so tricky to get back and why I don't recommend doing it is, as you'll see, there's both this corner and this corner that I have to get located at the same time. Anyways, enough about that. We'll take this over to our bench and I'll show you how to replace that tweeter. All right, so with this removed, and again, just due to the, it's not impossible, but just due to the trickiness of this, I'd recommend just doing this in the car with just this portion released. But if you take it off fully, that works as well. We're gonna get to our factory tweeter. So the way to do that, this is a foam piece that just sort of sits into place. It's got its wiring ran through it. You'll actually have to lift this sticker up to get that out. So that can just sit to the side. We get access to our factory tweeter, which is just held in by this set of plastic clips running around it. So you'll just kind of, be gentle with the wiring. You can kind of use your thumb to release these. You don't want to bend these too far back, otherwise it won't grip. And that releases this, the word I want to use is dinky little factory tweeter. As to why they use this small of a tweeter in a housing this big, I'm not sure. The good news for you is that we are going up to a 25 millimeter silk dome mid-range in this beautiful machined aluminum housing. From this little factory guy here. You get a big improvement in sound and clarity with that. So with this out of the way, ours is ready to just go ahead and snap in. You want the wiring running downwards, so down towards the bottom. And it's a perfect fit. Now here you can see it's pretty snug already. You could get away without doing any glue. Since we're in here and we include this with your kit, we recommend just putting a dab or two just to prevent it from rotating or any sort of vibration if you're ever on like a gravel road or something like that. As you can see, the factory tweeter didn't have that. It's not 100% necessary, but it's something that can be nice to do. So the way we'll do that is just in one of these surfaces. You don't want to do it on the clip itself. You'll just do a little glob in there. Doesn't have to be pretty, and then we can just do one over here too. Just kind of squirt some in and get that lead gone. Well, that's ugly, and I just did exactly what I told you not to, but we're gonna pretend I didn't and move on. So we've given this glue, it takes about 15 to 20 minutes to cure to a point where it's just tacky rather than sort of sticky. So with that done, this foam cover is ready to go back on. You can try to follow the factory wiring around. What we like to do, we just kind of run it down the bottom here and out this slot. So this just will slide in and line up here. So we'll pull that factory wiring down right by that. And with that in place, it's ready to be installed back onto the door. So if you've actually removed this all the way like we did to show it on the bench, we're about to have a clip that shows you getting that in. It's not a difficult part of the process, it's just sort of long and, as I'll reference in it, finicky. But But if you've only shown or only removed the tweeter pod itself and have that hanging off, I'll show you how to do that here, and that's gonna be the majority of you guys. If you have removed it fully, you can stick around and we'll show you how to get this tweeter trim piece back in. All right, so with your Bavsound tweeter popped into place, the foam is on the back here, our lead is hanging down, we are ready to get this line back up. Now there's two channels here that are important. I wanna show this. Can you come over here, Kobe? I'll show you this first channel. So there's this one here, you can see this is all lined up into it. So this leading edge will have to pop back into that. So I'll show you that first, so you just kind of make sure it's following it, get it all lined up. There's a locating kind of pin right here. So with that pushed in, we just have to get this front edge back on if you want to walk around here. Hopefully that wasn't anything too crazy. So there's this front little plastic edge, and we just have to get this lined up behind this foam again, which is done like so. So with that all lined back up, that's in place again, just as it was before. And then the door panel kind of comes and pinches it and holds it. And we will move on to the tweeter wiring as well as the mid-range installation. I'm not sure that we're gonna use this just because this part kind of sucks to get right with taking this off fully, but we're gonna record it just in case we do. All right, so with our tweeter, Bavsound tweeter hiding behind this foam here, the lead ran out. We are ready to put this back on. And the first thing to do, you'll see this long corner here. This has to go in before everything else. So if you want to come over to the front here, you'll see, and it's kind of tricky. You have to get it into that slot there. And again, kind of work its way in, and that's lined up. And then if you want to come back here, I'll actually show you as well. Kind of lines up all the way through here. And I'll be honest, early in the video I'd said not to take it out. That was actually pretty easy, so maybe we will include this and you guys will see me doing this easily. There's another channel up here to get this into. So kind of lift it up and in as we go through. So you kind of just work its way. You can see this one sliding out. This is what I'm talking about. It's not hard, it's just sort of finicky. All right. So getting this all lined up, we'll kind of work our way through. Then this will slide up and over here. We'll kind of see, this is probably the trickiest other corner here, just as there's this foam in the way. So what I kind of like to do, you can kind of push the foam down with your thumb. And then this has to lift up. And again, we got to get it into this channel here. Sometimes, I'll show you a little trick. You can use this guy to kind of get under that edge and guide it in. Maybe come back up through here, again the same thing, kind of lift it up and over. It's sort of one of those, you'll just work your way around, and as the rest gets lined up, it makes it easier to have everything go where it needs to. All right, so coming back down here again. And this is one of those, it's not very fun to watch, but it's really not too hard. As you can see, I'm not using much force here. It's just a matter You want to watch to not scratch the paint there. Just a matter of trying to get it lined up. This is one of those jobs that I would call finicky. So I want you to come back around here and show, because I think this actually might be what's restricting us. You can see it's out of its channel up here, which is probably preventing it from going enough over there to line up. So if you just pull out slightly on it again, this is where this plastic tool can be nice. And just get it up into there. You can sort of see it just found its slot where it wants to be and worked in. I bet if we go around to the front now, that will be easier to line up. And it is. So, with that in place, and that, let's see here. That just hangs out there. Oh, you can see it's already trying to fall back out on us. It's really just about getting it up into this channel. Just like so. So you can see, oh, it was this little leading corner, I think, that wasn't in. There we go. So you can see with that corner tucked in, basically you just want this all tucked in that ridge behind this felt piece here. You can see that's lined up all the way around. Then if you want to come around to this side, you'll see it's the same thing all through here. Again, this is one of those, it's not a difficult part of the install. It's just sort of take your time, get it all lined up, and once it's slotted into place, we can move on to the mid-range install, and we'll talk a little more about the tweeter connection. All right, so we have the factory mid-range removed, and we are ready to install ours. The one thing we've done to prep this here is put this foam surround on. That comes in the package. There's a pair, one for each mid-range and the door. It's just this outer ring that's used. It's just to form a nice seal to the door panel. That inner puck is not used. That's just to keep its shape during shipping. The one thing we'll do as well, it's not necessary on this chassis, but just gives you a little more room to work with the wiring. You can just remove this rubber surround on the magnet. It is a nice, pretty piece, but it is just a aesthetic thing. It doesn't provide any function. We'll very gently bring these leads in towards the mid-range and then run the wiring around here. This mid-range is what we are calling our version 2 mid-range. It's going to be different to what you'll receive for your car. Your car is going to have this thick gasket on the back here that the wiring can compress with. So we'll just run this wiring out on this front edge, which, if you can see, the ears of the tweeters, there's these two that are closer. The one that's farther apart, we'll run these around the back of the mid-range. Again, you want these tucked tight, like so, and then out in between the two closer ears. So with that done, you can kind of fold this back over and hold it. We will line it up on the ears, and it is important that the wiring is pulled snug when you're doing this so that it can't interfere with the window mechanism. We'll just get this one screw started here. And you'll want to not be doing what I'm doing with my thumb. That's just me trying to make this look good on the video. You don't really want to be touching that cone. A little bit's okay, but if you put too much pressure, you would risk damaging the speaker. And obviously we won't want to get that wiring in there. We'll pull that out and around. And we're not going tight on these yet. You just want to get it enough to hold it. All right, so you can line this up. Now, this is going to be important, especially on these top two screws, but you'll just want to go around very lightly. What I recommend, use your fingertips. You don't want to do a full grip tighten, as you could over bend these ears, which isn't necessary. Just kind of, sort of like putting a wheel on, you'll just do a little bit on each screw at a time until it's snug. And we'll come back here. You want to move around while doing it. So you'll see there's going to be some tension as we compress that foam gasket. So that one's snug there. And then again, the same thing here. You don't need to crank on these or go tight. That can over compress the gasket. That can pull the ears out of alignment. You have issues with the mid-range. So with these 3 screws snug down, it's time to talk about the tweeter wiring. And again, depending on when you're watching this video, this process might be a little bit different for you here. We are doing an updated tweeter that's going to have this filter harness in line. This current revision tweeter, which again, if you're watching this early on, will be this way, where it's a separate inline filter harness. This must be installed. You must have an inline filter in between the tweeter and mid-range. If you're watching this probably 6 months to a year from now, your tweeter is going to have this in line. There won't be a second set of connectors. But for those of you watching this early, all we have to do here, you'll take this, plug it into the tweeter lead, and then this goes to the black plug on the mid-range. So that makes our tweeter connection. We'll come here and connect the amplifier lead into the mid-range like we referenced earlier. Just gonna be a little snug sometimes there. So with that connected, and again, I'll just cover it here. If you have a no audio situation, what's happened is you've probably grabbed the wrong plug. So this again is a just tweeter extension harness. That's what we're using here. You can check the wiring colors. The color that's up here, which in this case is blue and green and blue and white. And again, down here, blue and green, blue and white will not be used. You can just tuck that out of the way. We include some zip ties for you, which I'll grab off the floor here. So you can just kind of grab this wiring. What I recommend, you can see down where the wiring is here, you'll want that to be zip tied here, as that's a low spot in the door panel that leaves room for this inline filter harness. Right. Grab one more wiring tie, and you can just kind of clump all this up here with it. Apologies, this is boring for those of you that have tied wires before. And we could even do a third up here. For the sake of time in the video, I won't. But with all this wiring kind of tucked down out of the way, we are ready to put the door panel back on. So before we put the door panel back on, I want to just take a moment with you guys to talk about this new clip style BMW is using. So this is what a good version of it looks like. You got this little white cap. This lower portion, when you pull the panel out, should be all the way forward. This rubber surround is there. So that is a good one. And when we're snapping them into the panel here, you'll notice there's 2 sort of channels. You want this lower channel down here. So it goes in this lower one. So when you're lining that up, it just slides into its fixture there, pops into place. If your clips look like this or this, they can't be put back in. The reason being, this is the position it's in when it's locked into the door panel. Now this is a savable clip, so you could actually get behind this white thing here with the panel removal tool, push it forward and get it to look like this again and reuse it. In a case like this, if this happens to you when that white cap is lost, you could probably reassemble it. You'll probably just want to source a new clip. We're looking into solutions and ways to get these right now. They are definitely available at your BMW dealership. We're going to work on ways to have that available from us as well. Just not sure exactly what that will look like yet. All right, guys. So as we get ready to put this door panel back on. If you noticed any of these clips have broken, we've got you covered. We'll include a few of these in the kit, and the way to swap those out literally just pops out, slides outwards. You'll want to put it in, as we showed earlier in the video, with that outer slot. So we'll sit up a bit. So we'll get that lined up as so. And that's locked into place, and we are ready to put this door panel back on. So the first thing we'll do is, there's a little more slack in it. Just take this black connection here. Might be a little dark on camera. The side you want up is the side where the pins are visible. The solid black side is down. So with the pin side up, this will just slide into place. It will lock in on both sides. This guy here, the door panel, or the door handle, has a spring in it, so it should be in place. You'll just take this, it kind of locks in up there, and then you'll just push downwards. That's locked in. You can pull the handle to verify. You can hear the mechanism moving. From there, the next step will be getting the door lock lined up, so you can see that's in there. To get the panel into its channel up here, you'll kind of have to lift up and just, without releasing that door lock, just kind of slide it into place. And so that will be hanging here now, and we are ready to pop the clips in. Now, on video, of course, this will be hard to show. Before you apply any pressure, just as these clips do tend to be a little delicate, you can look inside and actually make sure they are lined up with their holes. And you can kind of feel like where it will start, the panel is almost sitting flush. And once it's like this, if it's not lining up or the panel's sitting off, then you'll want to make sure that's lined up before applying pressure. Once it's sitting in flush like that, you can just, with your hand, go down, apply force, and that's clipped into place. And we'll follow that process along the whole panel here. So again, same thing. Before smacking and applying force, really make sure it's lined up and almost sitting flush so you're not breaking these clips. And then along the whole bottom as well. And that panel's on there good and solid. And then we just have to reinsert our 2 screws and that cover. I'll get the screws in so you don't have to watch me do that, and I'll show you how to pop that cover back in just a second here. So I'm actually kind of glad this happened. You can see on the door panel where it's not sitting flush here, there's these 2 little hooks that will go behind the tweeter pod. I didn't get that lined up initially. The good news is it's really easy to line up after the fact. You just push it in like that, and that all locks in, sits flush now. You make sure the clip's in place, and we got a perfect alignment on the whole door panel. All right, so we've got all the clips are snapped into place. We got that alignment fixed. So we've put the 2 screws back. There's one in here that, again, nearly impossible for us to get on video today with our angles, but it's in there. You can see it easily if you bend down. Got the one in the door handle. So this cover just has to go back on. There's the 2 clips here that will snap in, and then the 2 little guys that will sort of latch into place before that. So you'll just latch it in. Boom. And you are done and ready to move on to the rear door. And then after the rear door, we'll get to that center channel. All right, so we are moving on to the rear door panel. We have the almost identical setup to the front with 1 screw up here in the door handle area and 1 screw down in the door pocket. And then once we get those 2 out, we're gonna just remove this series of clips, or pop that series of clips out, I should say, using our plastic panel removal tool. And then the door panel will lift up and out of the way. So we're gonna skip forward to me having these screws removed, the clips popped, and I'll show you what to do from there. All right, so we have our 2 screws out and we are ready to pop the panel off. So we'll just go around with our tool. We wanna go straight out on those clips. Once it's going, I just kinda like to go around with my hands. With all the clips removed, the panel will slide upwards. And then if you want to come around, I'll show you what we're going to do on the connections here. So it's the same thing again. We got this guy here. You'll lift upwards and out. Then we've got a slightly different style connector. There's these 2 little tabs again. You'll push inwards on those. That releases. The panel is off. and we'll join back here in a second, and I'll show you how to replace this speaker. So with the door panel removed, it's time to take the speaker out. Same thing again, single connection in the rear since there's no tweeter. That just pulls straight out. There's no tab or anything like that. Then we'll remove our 3 screws. And get ready to put in our Bavsound mid-range. Now again, this is our version 2 mid-range. Acoustically, going to version 3, we're not making any differences. We're just changing around some of the gaskets. So by the time you're watching this video, you're probably gonna have a slightly different setup here. It's gonna have a full form gasket on the rear to eat up the gap here and close that out. And then it's gonna have some sort of gasket on the front. You may not be getting these foam rings from us. If you do, I'll show you how to apply that real quick. If you don't, you can ignore this part of the video. So we're just using this outer ring. That inner puck can be discarded. I'll separate this backing here to expose the adhesive. And then that just goes on the front of this, like so. And that just forms a seal to the door panel. Then on the back, we'll go ahead and take this protective cover off. Just makes it a little easier to route the wiring in this case. The leads, ever so gently, we'll just bring those in here, pull the wiring down, and I like to follow around the magnet there. And we'll, same place as the factory, have them exit out here. Again, you're gonna have a thick gasket. These are gonna go up against and seal with. That's just not present on the mid-range that we are filming with today. So, go ahead and get that situated. Get a screw going here. Just enough to hold that in place, or just about, while I grab the other screws. And again, the same as the front, we almost don't need to show you this. And maybe Kobe will do some slick editing here and you don't have to watch me go on the star pattern again. Maybe you do. We'll see how he's feeling that day. We'll just go slowly around and go snug on all the screws, not tight. Again, just use your fingertips. A little bit at a time. And on the mid-range you will have, we'll be compressing that foam gasket. And you just want to go until you get just a nice snug fit there, like so. Now, on this rear speaker, we don't have a tweeter, so you're only gonna have the one lead. So this black lead coming off of our speaker is not used. That's normal. It lets us keep the cost down as we don't have to order multiple types of mid-ranges, and it doesn't do anything here. We'll zip tie all this out of the way in just a second. So you'll just take your factory wiring, plug it in to our supplied speaker, and then go ahead and just zip tie this all out of the way here. I'm not gonna show you that and bore you with it, but that is basically all we have to do here. At that point, identical to the front, you'll just latch this back on, pop the door panel back in place, this plugs in, this clips in, you'll line that up when you're putting the door panel back on and you are good to go. All right, so we have our 3 screws out of the mid-range, 2 screws out of the tweeter. We'll lift the mid-range out first, unplug the 2 blue plugs there. I'll set that to the side. This tweeter lifts out here. And the first thing we will do is take our tweeter here. And it might be kind of hard to see on video. There's some slots for the wiring. We use a larger style, what's effectively a crossover here. So what we're gonna do is line our tweeter up and get the wiring into this slot. Now it's gonna fight you a little bit to do this, but you can get it to go. And then we'll bolt the tweeter down. So this wiring's in the slot here, and then we'll kind of route this like that. But until we bolt the tweeter down, it will try to move around on us. All right. So I want to make sure that wiring is still in its slot back here. Which it is. Now you might have to come up and get a little tighter angle. I want to show you guys where to route the rest of the wiring for this tweeter below the mid-range. Or are you able to see this channel here? Is that coming through? So there's another little channel that will allow the mid-range to sit flush. So that tweeter is bolted down. The wiring for this is ran through the channel over here, and this is just going to sit right next to the tweeter like that. Now, we will grab our flush flange mid-range. We'll take the wiring. We'll go ahead and plug our tweeter wiring into the black plug and the factory wiring into the green plug. You'll want to kind of get these leads in tight. Again, be delicate. But they will flex a little. Now we've taken off our extra rubber magnet just as it gives us some more clearance here. Now as we're setting this down, let's see, where's the other hole? As we're setting this down, you kind of want to tuck all the wiring in, and for this capacitor harness, and this is going to be hard to capture on video, there's just a little slot here the wiring goes through. So you want to line that up and kind of feed everything down into the hole like so. So you can see this is sitting completely flush. The wiring is in its channel. The capacitor harness is sitting in between the mid-range and tweeter. And I'm going to bolt these 3 screws down, and we'll join you again to show you, or you'll join me again, I should say, and I'll show you how to put this cover back on. All right, so we've got the cover to put back on. We've got this bolted down, the tweeter is bolted down, the wiring for this is ran through its channel so the tweeter and mid-range can sit flush. And then we'll take this leading edge has these tabs that slide in, and then you just apply pressure around it on these clips, which I use the palm technique. Which sometimes works, sometimes doesn't. I'm glad you guys are kind of seeing that. Sometimes you have to use the lower palm as the deck has flex in it. And that is in place. All right, so now that we have the front and rear door completed, we are ready to move on to the center channel location. So the cover here, it's held in by a series of clips. They go straight down. So we'll take this tool and you'll just kind of come in. The clips, if I remember correctly, are situated just basically every couple inches. So you'll just want to come in, get under it, and without scratching that beautiful touchscreen, so you'll see that one just popped up. You'll just kind of make your way around the whole exterior and pop them up. You do want to just apply a little force. If you just bent this all the way up here, you would risk cracking that piece, which you don't want it to. So you can see that clip is right in here. Now for me personally, since it's hard to get the tool over there, once it's up to here, you can just use your fingers to pop that up. So I'll show you those little clips going around here. And there you go. So this is a development car for us, so you can actually see our mid-range and tweeter are already installed. It looks pretty much identical to the mid-range and tweeter that you'll find in your door. So the next step that we're gonna do is remove these 4 screws which hold in this whole panel here that has the mid-range and tweeter on it. So rather than having you watch me unscrew 4 screws, which is pretty mind-numbing, again, it's 1 here, 1 here. Show that again with that new angle. So there's 1 here, and 1 here, 1 here, and 1 here holding it in. You do not need to remove the mid-range screws at this time. I'll go ahead and take those out, and we'll join you back, and I'll show you what to do from there. All right, and just to show you this, for these rear tools, we include this angle driver. It's really nice for a low clearance situation like this. The front, you have enough room to use the same screwdriver, or bit driver, I should say, that we have been using. But for these front ones, you will need this angle driver to get them out. So with our 4 screws removed, it is now time to take this up and out. Now you want to be a little careful, as there's not much risk of damaging anything, but just as you pull it up and out, it is a tight fit. This particular car's option with a leather dash. If you have the non-leather dash, it might be a little easier. What I like doing is just kind of getting in and pulling up on it like that. Now, we have had this out before. There's one speaker connection you'll have to remove as well, which of course is gonna give me trouble here. Just be careful not to scratch your touch screen. So we have had this out, and if you want to come over here, you can kind of see it's got this adhesive on it. The first time when you take it out, it might give you a little more trouble removing that than that just gave me, but it will just come out with those 4 screws. That's all that's holding it in. And if you want to join me over on the bench, I will show you what to do from here. All right, so with this out of the car, again, since this is a development vehicle, we already had this installed. You'll find your factory mid-range and tweeter. Installation is going to be pretty much identical to the doors that you've already seen. These 3 screws come out, mid-range lifts out, our mid-range drops in, you put these back. Again, go in a star pattern. You just need to go snug. You don't want to go tight, just snug. If you see these ears distorting at all, that's a sign of an issue and might pull things out of alignment. So again, just snug. Then on the back side here, you can kind of see how we have our wiring routed. So this is our tweeter. Again, we use just a couple dabs of glue here. Pops right out, our tweeter pops in. The glue is just to make sure there's no rattling or anything of that nature. We have this included inline filter harness on the tweeter. It doesn't quite fit in the factory location. The good news is there's tons of clearance up under that dash. So what I've done is just kind of routed the wiring into here. And then that will just sit down, sits nice and flush under there. Obviously that's plugged into the lead on our mid-range. And then this mid-range wire plugs into the factory lead. So with all that shown in there, I'll show you how to plug it in, and we'll screw it back down, put that cover back on, and you are ready to enjoy some great sound. With the Bavsound tweeter and mid-range in, and if you did glue that tweeter, you'll probably want to wait 20 minutes or so for that glue to set before doing this. We are ready to put this piece back on. So the first and most important thing to do, plug in that mid-range. Make sure that tweeter is plugged in so you don't have to go back in here to do that. With that done, you'll flip this over here. Then with this wiring, you just don't want it to get in this vent. Beyond that, anywhere in there is pretty much free game. This panel will sit back down. With that in place, you'll just go ahead and do these 4 screws again, and we'll jump to a shot where I have those in, as you don't need to watch me just screw those down. So we have our 4 screws back in place on this, we'll call it the center channel pod here. So the last thing we need to do is go ahead and reinstall this cover here. So again, once that's all lined up, you can just go around and pop each clip into place and it sits flush and good as new. And then you can put on a track of your choosing, turn it up a bit, and just sort of sample these speakers and enjoy that big improvement that you're getting. which that's already sounding much nicer than the factory system. I think you guys are going to be pleased with that. And I am ready to get out of our bay here, which is unair conditioned, and we're in the middle of the heat wave in San Diego. I think I'm going to go jump in the ocean.